Hey guys, going to do a quick tutorial on how to add some textures and interesting lighting effects, maybe some colors, and a little bit of blur maybe. We'll get into a little bit of everything, just something extra to dress up your images a little bit, make them a little bit more creative, take them out of the norm. A lot of times it adds a lot more interest. A lot of fine art photographers will use something like this. So, like in class, I'm using my example here with my levitation picture. First thing I want to do is grab a texture. I have some in the pickup folder. You can search for some online. There's a lot of free ones out there that you can grab and use in your own image. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to drop this right here on my picture, so it adds another layer. I'm going to rotate it, I'm going to hold shift, rotate it, and then I'm just going to size it to fit my image somewhat nicely. So here we go. Boom, 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 and done. So now, obviously, it's covering up my image. I'm going to come over here to the layers panel and start adjusting my blending modes. This is how you change the way that this image blends with the image right below it. So I'm going to go through here, look at some of the options. Multiply, overlay, and soft light are usually the ones that are kind of go-to when you're adding textures and blending these images together like this. So I know that overlay is kind of what I'm looking for, so I'm going to stick with that. You can check out any of these you want. What works for me might not work for you, so I'm going to stick with overlay for now. And also, good thing about this is that I can adjust the opacity of this layer. Decide if that's too much, I can kind of back off a little bit. So I'm going to drop it to about 77 on mine. I can still see some textures maybe I don't want. I can remove those later, but I'll get to that another time. Alright, so now I got that. Now the textures that you drag over might not have the color combinations that you're wanting. So what I'm going to do is work with some lighting techniques that I can adjust without having to totally mask over my texture. So one way is to do that is by selecting this up here, gradient map. And the good thing about this is that it adds an adjustment layer. This one right here obviously pops up as a photo negative. I can reverse it to see the photo positive. I can open this up and see other options that I have for gradients. Some I want to stay away from, some are a little bit more subtle, maybe a little bit nicer. I kind of like the way that looks. If there are some here that you don't really like, you can always see what else Photoshop has to offer and click on this little gear. You can click on some of these different things here. Some of them I have not even seen. Look at special effects. Do I want to replace all of these? No. If you were going to open up a different family of gradients, then click on where it says append, and that way it shows where the new ones kind of pop up. So I'm actually just going to stick with the one that I've already chosen, and from here I can also adjust the opacity. You know, if I want some other color tones to kind of show through, I can drop that down and see some of those other colors that I had before. And so you can adjust it that way. Another way, I'm going to keep this layer, but I'm going to turn it off. To add some color interest to yours is kind of looking at what Photoshop has as far as built-in filters. And this is what I call Photoshop's Instagram filters. You can click on this color lookup adjustment and go through these drop downs and see what do you like in these different types of filters. And again, it's an adjustment layer, so you can adjust how much or how little you want to show up. So it's kind of subtle. I like that one. I think I like this one too. And I like this because I like those purple tones for my texture. I don't want to hide that so much. So I'm going to stick with that. There are other ones here you can also look at too, and down here. So you can adjust these kind of like the gradient map, and you can also tone this down a little bit. You can do it that way to the whole image, or maybe I don't like so much how this is blown out. I can mask directly on that. We know how to use our masking tools. Use a soft brush and kind of mask maybe a little bit around my shoulder so I don't lose some of those details there. Kind of bring back, I don't want that to be blown out and look really bad, so I'm going to kind of play with that and go back and forth. So you see I masked a little bit there. I can combine both this and the gradient map to see what I like the most. My color lookup is like 100%, so if I want to show a combination of both, I can have them, I can adjust the opacity to show through this one and more of what's underneath. I can also add a layer mask to this. Like I said, I have some textures on me that I might not want. Maybe it's too distracting. I'm going to add a layer mask to that, and I can brush through that texture, kind of get rid of some of these little textures on me. That way I show up more clear, more the texture is focused now in the background. So I can do something like this. I can also, let's see, actually I'm going to adjust this a little bit more. I like my options that I've done so far. So now so far I've gone from my original photo, this, to this, to this, to that. I can keep on going. Something else, especially if you have a busy background, you can do something by adding in some blur around you. So if this is too complicated, or you feel your focus is not quite on your main subject, you can easily add some of these blur techniques. This is something I would do after you've combined all your images. So what I'm going to do here, say I'm done, I'm going to flatten my image now. It's going to take all those and squash it into one file. I'm going to now go to my filter, blur, and since I have one main subject in my image here, I'm going to stick with an iris blur. I think that'll keep it simple. And that way I can make sure that my subject, myself, nice and clear. And I'm going to drop that down to 0, and everything else around, I can adjust this over here and click OK, and there we have it. I'm going to save this, make sure I save this as a JPEG before I post it. So you kind of see where I've gone from the very beginning to where I ended up with. So here's my original, and then here is my completed finished image. Try it out. Dress up some of your pictures. You can find a lot of new life in some old images that you found